I wasn't planning to buy anything that day, least of all a person. I'd come to Ares Station 6 for coolant coils and a new filtration valve. My desert rig was stalling again, and if you let the filters go too long on Mars, the red gets into your lungs, into your dreams, into your soul. I was already halfway there. The war had ended 15 years ago, but the veterans like me still wandered. Some ran cargo, others turned to booze, dust fights, or the void. Me? I fixed things. Machines, mostly. Never people. I lived out past the western ridge. Just me, my tools, and the wind that never stopped whispering. I didn't need company. I had rust, memory, and regret. That was enough. At least, I thought so. Inside the surplus dockyard, between dented cryopods and busted drone shells, I saw her. She wasn't in a display unit. No lights. No banner. Just standing there in a corner. Still, like she'd been forgotten. Not metal, but not entirely organic either. Skin the color of jade shadowed with ash. Eyes like polished silver. The registry tag clipped to her collar read, Model 7F, Civilian Companion, Decommissioned. Survivor of the Hesperian breakout, the clerk said casually. Last of her batch. Emotion stable. Quiet. Fully integrated linguistic protocols. 50 credits, if you're curious. I wasn't curious. Not really. But I couldn't stop looking. She had a scar beneath one eye. Not a data port. A scar. Real skin. Real history. She looked at me once. Not pleading. Not hopeful. Just present. Like she was already used to disappointment. And this was just one more. I didn't decide. Not logically. My hand moved before my brain did. I'll take her, I said. Like I was ordering a part. Like she was nothing. And maybe that's what I wanted her to be. A machine, an appliance, something I could fix, unlike everything else in my life. She sat silently in the passenger seat of my sand cutter as I drove back through the dust swells. No questions, no reaction. Just watched the red dunes roll by like someone seeing freedom but not sure it was real. I didn't speak either. What could I say? Welcome home? You're safe now? No, there wasn't a home. Not really. Just a garage half buried in wind-carved metal, walls patched with scrap, and an old man who didn't like mirrors anymore. She cleaned the place that evening. Not because I told her. She just moved with a sense of duty. Washed dishes that hadn't been touched in months. Aligned my tools. Replaced wires in the coffee unit that I'd given up on. Later, I caught her staring at a photograph I kept above the workbench. Earth Fleet, 203rd Division. Young faces, uniforms, fire in the eyes. Back before we knew how the stars really looked up close. You miss them? She asked. Her voice was soft. Not mechanical. Not pre-programmed. I lied. No. She just nodded and went back to work. That night, long after the lights dimmed, I sat awake, listening to the quiet, to the wind pressing against the walls, to something shifting deep inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not warmth, not comfort, but the flicker of unwanted hope. Mornings on Mars don't start with light. Not really. The sun here is a pale disk, slow and unimpressed, like it's just showing up because it has to. Dust hangs in the air like old regret, and everything feels like it's been waiting for something that never came. I woke to the smell of food. Not rations, not synth packs or compressed nutrition wafers, actual food, roasted tubers, spiced somehow. I walked into the galley like I was sleepwalking, half convinced I was hallucinating. And there she was, Selah, quietly moving around the stove like she'd always belonged there. You found spices? I asked, groggy. Storage behind the generator, she said without looking. You keep a lot of junk. Among it, flavor. I didn't know how to respond to that. She served the meal without a word. We ate in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was the silence of people who knew what to do with stillness. The kind you only learn after loss. She started helping in the garage without being asked. At first, just handing me tools. Then gradually, more. Rewiring old batteries. Realigning servo motors. Adjusting torque by feel, not sensor. She was a natural. Or maybe she just learned fast. "You were built for war?" I asked one evening, half buried under the rig, elbow deep in grease. "No," she said calmly. "We were built to support soldiers. Emotional regulation. Comfort. We were the warm voice behind the line." I peeked out. "You don't act like a machine." "That's because you haven't tried to make me one." She fixed more than machines. The water filter that had sat dead for years, humming within 3 days. The lights? No more flicker. The oxygen alarms? Calibrated. She found an old music drive, repaired the player, and filled the garage with something I hadn't heard in decades. Earth sounds. Elvis, Sinatra. Real melody. Songs from a time when the sky meant dreams, not warships. And one day, I came in and found her working on my guitar. It had been cracked and dust-choked for 10 years. I never touched it. She had stripped it down, cleaned the neck, replaced the strings with what she'd scavenged from insulation coils and wire. "You don't know how to play," I said. "No," she admitted. "But you do." That night, after the power blinked out for the 3rd time in a row, we sat in the soft dark by the backup lamp. She looked at the picture again. My unit, the 213th Earth Fleet. "You miss them?" I didn't lie this time. "Yeah," I said. "Every damn one." She nodded, not out of pity, out of understanding. And then, softly, almost like asking permission, she said, "You fixed machines. I fixed people. Maybe now we can fix each other." I didn't sleep well that night, because for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of dying alone. I was afraid of not being alone, of feeling again, of losing something real, just when I'd started to believe it might be possible. It was the kind of morning that warned you something was coming. The wind howled harder than usual, and the Martian sky had that dull ochre tone that meant a full-scale ion storm was brewing. Everything smelled of static and dust. I could feel it in my bones, the way old soldiers feel war before it starts. Selah stood at the edge of the outpost, eyes scanning the sky like she understood it. Maybe she did. Maybe those long-forgotten protocols buried in her memory still recognized the signs of danger. "You need to bring the panels in," she said calmly. "The storm will rip them apart." I nodded. We moved in tandem, no words needed. She helped lock down the solar arrays, seal the vents, brace the comms tower. Halfway through, the sandcutter's generator let out a sharp pop. A fuse blew, then another. Sparks lit the dusty air. I swore and rushed over. "Get back inside. This could blow." But Selah didn't move. She grabbed the tools before I could stop her, crouched, and started disconnecting the core systems with quick, deliberate hands. She wasn't just guessing. She knew this tech, inside and out. Knew it better than I did. "I used to rewire battlefield med stations during dropship's descent," she said, almost like it was a memory she didn't want to share. "Everything breaks when you fall from the sky." We got the generator offline with seconds to spare. The plasma cap would have ruptured. We would have been flash-fried inside our own bones. The storm hit by dusk. It wasn't just wind and dust. It was electromagnetic chaos. The lights dimmed. The backup systems struggled. I could feel the static in my teeth. Inside the shelter, Selah worked like a machine, but wasn't one. She kept the filtration running, redistributed battery loads, even rigged my old comm panel to function as an internal monitor. She did everything except rest. "You need sleep," I told her. "I'm not tired," she replied. But she was. I could see it in her posture. The micro-movements she probably didn't know I'd noticed. She was pushing herself past whatever she was programmed for. Or maybe because she wasn't programmed anymore. She was choosing. Around midnight, I caught her standing by the guitar again. She didn't try to play, just stood there, listening. "What are you thinking?" I asked from the shadows. She turned slightly. "That maybe this storm is just the last test. For both of us." I stepped forward. "I didn't buy you to fix my home." She looked up, silver eyes soft. "No, you bought me to fix yourself. And maybe I am." That was the moment the alarm screamed. One of the perimeter sensors, the old military-grade one I hadn't used in years, lit up like fire. Proximity alert. Moving target. Human size. Not Martian wildlife. Not equipment debris. Something or someone was out there. "Could be scavengers," I said, grabbing my sidearm. Sayla didn't flinch. "Could be worse." We stared at each other, both remembering the war, both knowing exactly what kind of worse was possible on a planet filled with forgotten weapons and even more forgotten people. I motioned for her to stay behind. She didn't listen. Of course she didn't. We stepped outside together, into the red wind and flashing warning lights. I hadn't felt this alive in years. Not because I was ready for a fight, but because, for the first time since the war, I wasn't facing the unknown alone. The storm clawed at the shelter like it was alive. Wind howled across the landscape, tearing at cables, shaking steel. Every few seconds, lightning flashed orange through the thick red haze, electrical, Martian, chaotic. And in the middle of it, we saw him, a man, stumbling toward us through the dust, half covered in rags and armor, blinking hard against the stormlight. His eyes were wide, too wide, and his movement was wrong. Unnatural. Erratic. Sayla grabbed my arm. "He's not alone." I squinted past the blowing grit. She was right. Two more shadows, flanking him, slow and deliberate. Exosuit shapes. Military grade. They weren't just wanderers. They were looking for something. Or someone. Inside the shelter, we tracked their movement. The comms array was fried, external broadcasts down. We couldn't call for help, but we didn't need to. I'd seen this before. Recon units, slavers, cleaners, leftovers from the war who never stopped fighting. And they were close. "They'll come in soon," I said, checking the magazine on my old sidearm. "They'll want resources, maybe worse." Sayla was quiet. I turned to her. "You've seen people like this before?" She nodded once. I was traded between them for months. Before the station collapsed. Before you. Something inside me cracked. I didn't ask for details. Some scars don't need examining. They just need shelter. We made a choice. She went into the main corridor, rerouted power, and set a trap. Old tech, repurposed shock coils from the landing gear, re-rigged EMP charges, and a few tricks only someone like Sayla would know how to pull off. I took position near the airlock with a shotgun I hadn't fired in 10 years. The first man came through alone. He was gaunt, twitchy, half cybernetic. His eyes lit up at the sight of Sayla. "Model 87?" he said, stepping forward. "That's a rare one. You found her or bought her?" "I freed her," I said from behind him. He barely turned before the EMP went off. His implants fried instantly. He dropped, convulsing. The other two rushed in. I fired. The fight was fast and ugly. I got hit once, arm grazed, shoulder bruised. But we held. When it was over and the wind began to die, the shelter was still standing. And so were we. Selah patched me up with quiet efficiency. No words, just calm hands, warm bandages, and the occasional glance that said more than any protocol could. When she was done, I looked at her. "You don't belong to anyone now," I said. "Not even me." She stared at me for a long time. "No," she said softly, "but I choose to stay." The next morning, Mars was quiet again. The dust had settled. The red sun finally broke through the haze. Selah sat on the roof of the shelter, legs crossed, the old guitar in her lap. She couldn't really play, not yet, but her fingers found something close. A rhythm. A pattern. I stood beside her, watching the horizon. A dead planet, with just enough life for two souls who had no right to still be standing. And in that silence, in that soft post-storm peace, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was happy, and so was I.